So he's the president and CEO of miXOXO. For those of you not familiar with miXOXO, it's a premium dating community based on verified users only, with an emphasis on friend-based networking. Some interesting features include a complex matching algorithm based on hundreds of factors, a comprehensive web-based user management portal, including analytics for field reps distributing access codes. And he's going to share his journey about how he became an entrepreneur in pursuing this. He'll take us through all the stages, beginning with the inception of miXOXO application in August of 2012, the 8 months spent on business planning and innovation, the year spent on prototyping, development, and design. Hey, Ken. Final launch in April of 2014, and finally the rebranding and relaunch that's sometime prior to January 2015, which is right around the corner. So there's going to be an interview format, and we're going to take questions at the end. So if you would just hold your questions till the end, and then we'll take those. So what we're going to start out with here is, if you could take us back to the beginning, what were you doing before you started miXOXO?
So for 4 years I worked for my dad's business. He does real estate consulting. I was in sales, that's my history. And what sparked me to this idea was that I actually was in a relationship with, well, actually she's the vice president of our company. So that led us to think that, all right, maybe there's something that's out there for dating sites that could be better, because we actually met through her father, and that sparked my interest in this world that we're now working in.
So, so you had this idea. Now, when you had the idea, what form did it take? Was it a website? Was it an app? Was it just a business? Or how did you see it?
So we work with a company in California, and when I was out there in April of 2013, the CEO of the company, we were brainstorming, and he realized, the futures in apps. We were talking about, having our website being, working for phones, but nowadays if you don't have it with an app, you're pretty much out of the market. So it was his idea to do that. That's how we decided to go forward.
Okay, so you had this this idea for miXOXO, and somehow you had this relationship with this gentleman out in California. How did you, it was just an idea at this point. Mm-hmm. What made you, did you go out there specifically to talk to him about this, or was it just you happened to meet him while you were out there?
No, so I thought of the idea in October, well actually August of 2012. Then October I started working with a company here in New York. And we worked together for about 6 to 8 months brainstorming, and then when it got to the point of the logistics of how complicated of the app that I was actually looking to make, it was a little bit over their head. So that's when I had probably the hardest point in my time was when I had to start over and find a new company to work with. And that's where I explored different types of situations with someone you went through, basically with finding your company to work with. It's not easy, and you have a lot of trust that you have to put in company. It's a big risk, actually. So I actually found them through Google, and I was looking at companies in California, and specifically, that had experience in that. So that's how I found them through Google.
So now your experience is as in real estate, it sounds like, and sales experience. Did you have any experience in programming or project management of technical projects?
At zero, and I still don't have zero. And my CTO is here, he's actually filming. And that's why I brought him on. And just like finding a web company, equally as hard, if not harder, is finding someone to do a technical business when you're the one that isn't technical. So that's, we actually met through our VP, through Joy, and that's how I got introduced to Zach in probably August of 2012, and so that's how, without that and without programming, it's something that you have the vision, but you need somebody to execute it.
Mm-hmm. Sometimes you do feel like executing someone. So when you had this idea, how did you, we were talking earlier, Nancy would bring up about how she went and she looked and she saw there was thousands of ideas similar to hers. How did you validate your idea before moving forward? It sounds like you were pretty committed.
Right, well, there was something I came across recently, that the crossroad between something where what inspires you as a person and something that you want to achieve for the betterment of society, where that crossroads is, you might have a really great idea. So I genuinely had a passion for, I'm 30 now today, and at the time I was about 27 when I thought of this idea. And I started thinking of having children and wanting to do things that a 27-year-old guy sometimes think about. So my initial inclination was, I don't know if I will be getting married ever, but that doesn't mean you don't want to have children. So I thought, well, I wonder if there's a dating site that's out there for people that want to, not get married but want to have children. If they're in a current relationship, and I was in a 3.5-year relationship at the time, So with that being said, I looked into it and I found nothing. There's about 5,000 or 10,000 dating sites out there. It's crazy numbers, but there was nothing that addressed that. And when you multiply that by the fact that it was me and what things that I've learned, I realized that there was nobody doing what I was looking to, but that later expanded into just a better matching algorithm. There's no matching algorithm in online dating that links people together and you can switch back and forth and get a whole new group of people. So that's our competitive advantage that we have. I know if I could get to that point, then we would have something that's special.
Okay. Okay. Now going back to you had this idea, and obviously paying development teams is not cheap.
Right.
And so how did you finance this? How did you raise funds to do this? And if you're comfortable with sharing,
Yeah.
what were those amounts that you had to raise?
Sure. So the first quote that I got was $30,000, but that number was just kind of thrown out there. Then the next number I got was $60,000, and that number was just kind of thrown out there. And when it was really said and done, it came out to be actually $250,000. And so what happened was, that was from the company in California, and they gave me a startup discount of they took it down to $130,000, so about a $95,000 difference. That was feasible, and that's still an awful lot of money. When I got into this business, I was doing well in sales, and that gave me the idea to get into a new business. So I made a lot of money working, and I funded the first $150,000 by myself and some from my grandparents' 529 account. So
Okay.
that's it.
What was the, if you don't mind me asking, what was the total that you ended up putting into it when it was all said and done?
Right, so our app was completed last, the months kind of go together now, but a number of months ago. The total amount spent on the app, including development, was roughly $200,000. Now, just to get an idea of what the $200,000, what that buys, the sophistication of the app and the algorithm, it took about 10 months, so there was a lot of time that went into it. But now we just got a quote actually today. I'm doing a second app because we might get to that later.
Yeah.
And I've learned from so much of what I've done before that the $250,000 number, we actually, for this app, it's going to be only $40,000.
That's a significant difference.
Right, and that's a lot of money, obviously, but it shows how much I've come from where I was. And you don't even have to build a world-class app. That's not what really matters. It's getting people on it.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, so now, going back here, taking a step back, when you first approached your first development team, I guess this was one here in New
Yeah.
York, you're not a programmer, you're not technically oriented, so you had this idea, you had this vision for what miXOXO could be. How did you communicate that to them? Was it done verbally? Did you draw something on paper? What methods did you use to convey that information?
So there was a little bit of everything. There was a little bit of voice recording, a little bit of pen on paper, a little bit of just talking. I actually worked with the business, with someone that does copywriting for them, and he was helping with the business plan. And it is really difficult to go back and forth and convey what you want, especially things you know from that, from working on your website. It's very, very difficult. And especially starting over again, second time, it's even more difficult. Because you just want to get it on your head and into development. It's difficult, but it took a lot of time and we made it work.
Well, I know from my experience that you have to develop a scope of work so that they can price the project for you as accurately as possible, so there's fewer surprises. And so the scope of work is very important. And now, with your experience that you've had now, going back to it, because we have a lot of people here who are not technically oriented, what would you suggest to them to be able to convey that idea? What would be the best way that you would suggest doing that to get the most accurate estimate on the work?
Right, so I have two examples, well actually three. The first one is when I worked with a company here in New York. That taught me a lot and we never went through with the project. The second time was actually doing the app that I made. And now the third time around is the quote that I just got today. And the best answer I can give is simplification, because for the one I did with the company in California, it took 3 months to develop the prototype. And through that, that obviously took 3 times as long, 9-10 months to develop the app. This time around, and I had to pay $15,000 to do that prototype. This time around, I skipped all that, and I just got it down to just a much simplified app. Therefore, I didn't have to pay for it. I did it all myself, and it'll significantly minimize the time. So it's one word: simplicity.
Okay, and just to clarify, what you developed was a phone app as opposed to, you do have a website, but it's more of like kind of just a splash
Right.
page to hold it. Can you explain the interrelationship there of that?
Yeah, so it's completely separate. It's just an iPhone app for iOS. Ideally, people will be still using computers, and you can spend more time on a computer if you want, looking for people. But right now, it's just an app for iOS.
So the website is more to direct them to the phone app. Okay. So now, when you were exploring this, how did you and the development team make the decision to go with the phone app as opposed to a website or some other type of medium?
Well, that's what Les, the CEO, mentioned, to go for the app, because the amount of time that was going to be exhausted to do, well, we couldn't do both. And you couldn't do Android because of the time and the cost. So we decided to pick one, and Apple was the way to go.
Why Apple?
Well, one, just familiarity. Two, it's more predominantly, the following can be significant. Of course, there's more users on Android, but it's something I also felt more comfortable with because I've always had an iPhone, and so it was more just an easier transition.
Yeah, yeah. When I was faced with that decision, I talked to a lot of people in this room here to even figure out what language it had to be in, because as a non-technical person, you don't even have any perspective on where to even begin with this kind of stuff.
It's definitely foreign for people that you just don't know how it gets there. And luckily, there's people out there that know how to do it.
Yeah. So tell me about your experience through the development process, working with the teams and how that went. Was it a big demand of your time, and what was the flow like, and what would people expect if they wanted to build their own website or phone app? What should they expect as far as time commitments and resources, things like that?
So number one was my goal, and my advice is try to work locally if possible. That makes everything easier. But at the same time, if you can do things, cross country, internationally, it takes a lot of time in between, a lot of communication, and don't expect results as quick as you like to think that they can happen, because there's a lot on the back end, and they're not just working on your project.
How did you track the work that was being done?
Taking back a little bit, the prototype, we got updates. There was different stages throughout the process. Questions were being asked to make sure that they were on the right track. There was a lot of communication. We actually use a site called Basecamp, and that you post messages on there. There's a few of those out there like that, and that's so everybody's on the same page for the teams.
Do you have any suggestions for them as far as maintaining communication or working that process as you're actually going through the development cycle?
Well, it's critical. I mean, communication and everything is everything in life, and it's no different with building a product or an application. So as long as you're staying, if somebody doesn't get back to you for a while, it's the old Facebook kind of thing. Like, they might be running away with your money and your ideas. So definitely make sure that you know them and trust them before you get started on it.
So let's talk about feedback and testing of your site. So now, how did you, as you were developing it, how did you handle those things, and what methods did you use?
Well, number one, the downside that hurt me significantly was the timing that it took to build the app. If you build your own app and you're a developer, you don't have to spend money on paying people, and you can do it as quickly and as fast at all hours of the night. What happened was, for me, taking 10, 11 months to build the app, it killed a lot of time and energy, as well as different experiences on my end, and that was one of my downfalls, to lead me to where I guess I am right now. At the same time, it definitely gave me time to learn more about the entrepreneurial process and take advantage of the time that I did have to go out and meet people and explore a really, just a terrain that nobody knows about until you actually do it.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. How did you, did you do a beta testing segment on it?
Yeah, we did a beta testing, but it was more interim, just for the people on our team and a few other people. It really worked flawlessly. At the end of the day, the app worked, and they got everything in line. A few errors happened in the beta testing, so it took about 5 weeks after that to get to where we were ready to launch it, which was in April.
Okay, so tell us now, you got to the point where you're ready to launch it.
Mm-hmm.
How did you feel prior to your launch?
So something to keep in mind, you guys wouldn't know this, we actually, as a salesperson, I was using sales reps, and we actually met them all over the country. That was my way to market the product. I stayed in touch with people over the course of a year. It basically, I learned not to try to leave people on too long, because you lose that feel. So I had about 100 sales reps in 5 to 10 different cities that were going to promote the app, and they were obviously going to get a commission based upon how many people signed up, but it was more a feeder, like a domino effect, because people trust their family and friends when they're involving themselves in any type of social network or dating site. So that was what happened. So I had to really follow up with people And then we gave away a free code because we wanted people to sign up. We took away the cost. We dropped photo ID, and then the sales reps didn't do anything. So when that happened, I realized that there's something that I must have not taken into consideration, or a multitude of things, and that was the launch. So it's not all glamorous where, like, a million people sign up in a week. Marketing is the number one most difficult, most important thing of any business. And as someone that's in marketing, it doesn't matter what your background is, you still have a lot to learn.
So how did you locate these sales reps?
So there's a couple of organizations out there that are better than others, that you actually can go to. The one we went to, go to a hotel, you actually interview people in a suite, and they actually they search through the people, and they give you a little background on what the company's about, and then they bring them into the room, and if they're interested and you're interested, then you can pursue a further relationship with them. So.
Now, are these sales reps in particular fields, or?
They're just regular outgoing salespeople that are looking for secondary income, or they want to just try something new.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
Okay. So now you went ahead and launched the app, and what happened at that point? You obviously didn't have the support from the sales reps that you thought you were going to have. Did you have other marketing in place, and what was the reaction to your app?
Well, the way that I went about it was I wanted to get as many sales reps as possible. That was my number one priority. So to have something else to back up, not that I didn't think that I would need it, but there was no way that it would gain traction, I believe, unless people were spreading it through word of mouth. I tried to go right to the number one reason why things spread. So when that didn't, I forgot your second question.
Second question was about the types of marketing, and then how did people receive the launch?
Well, I had a few people that did get on it, and I had them test out the matching system, and people were interested and intrigued, but at the same time, in a business where you need to have people on it, if there's not a lot of people, it doesn't last very long. So it's a very tough business to enter, so that's all that.
Yeah, it's a chicken and the egg conundrum.
That's what they all say, yeah, that's how it is.
Okay, so here, you just spent all this money, devoted all this time and effort and energy into developing this phone app. So it launches, doesn't get the reception you thought it would get. So what were your thoughts at that point, and then how did you respond to that?
So this was about May of this year, so about 5 months ago, and it was about that time that I guess it was the second part where, the first part being when I could have given up, I guess, is when you had to switch companies, and that's the hardest part. And I got over that hill, and this was the second time. Arguably it was worse, but it's what you just said, and here I am, and I was actually pretty down on things, but I figured, you know what, if you can't give up, you got to just keep going, because that's the only way you're going to get better around it, and you learn that from it. So it was around that time, around June, July, when it was pretty much definitive that it wasn't panning out, the marketing aspect of it, and we still had a product. There was a lot of good things going for it. So it's actually about the same time that I came across your Innovative X and a few other things, and that kind of got the ball rolling again. And this whole past summer, Zach, myself, and Joy, we really put our heads together, and we just brainstormed and just figured out how can we get traction, because if you're in a social business, you have to have people on there, and you're not going to get it just through word of mouth from people just starting and just having a ton of people on there. There has to be something else that triggers them to want to get onto something else that you have, and that's how we went about. So what we're doing now is focusing on colleges and having a more specific market. When I started, everybody said you can't be for everyone, and I said, well, I am for everyone, but I wasn't for everyone right now. You have to build up to that. And so I learned that the hard way, but I think the better way, because I'm that much better off because of it.
So you're saying that in hindsight, you would have focused on a particular segment of the market?
In hindsight, if I did it 180 degrees differently, I probably wouldn't have had this idea. So it wouldn't already be made. I wouldn't have something in the wings. But I could have just done a simple app and just gone for college students, and who knows, maybe it becomes Facebook. Like Facebook didn't know what they were becoming. I have a larger vision, and I've kind of worked backwards. That's just how I operate. So that wouldn't be me, but it sure would have been a lot cheaper, and I probably would have a product that's out there in the market right now.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Yeah. Now, how did you're saying you're targeting college students, how did you determine that was the segment that you want to pursue?
So there's a number of, what your earlier question was, in talking about how do you find that you have something that other people don't have. So you have to determine that people are going to use your product. And so there's a few things. One, we're filling a void that I believe Facebook isn't filling. So there's that. Secondly, iPhones are number one used by college students. It's a strong market. For every one person's Android, there's like 2 or 3 people that have iPhones. And I did some studying on high school students that where they're moving to, and 60% of high school students are going to be buying iPhones next. So the stats showed that we had a very good market. Everything that I didn't do the first time, I'm doing this time around. So the whole country,
Market analysis.
the market, yeah.
Let me bring something up here. This is just off of your website that talks about some of the things that makes your site different, or your app different than the others. Do you want to talk about some of these things?
Yeah,
How it differentiates?
I was laughing because this actually came about when we were in Chicago. Zach's smiling over there behind the camera because this was something that Zach really helped to get us focused on. And honestly, this led to our college idea because I was talking with some people and I said, what makes us different? Because people don't remember, they only want to know one thing. Well, here you see 20 things, and I had 35, and I had to get it down to 20. So again, simplification is what I've learned in this 2 years, more than any other word. And so Zach, we put together a list. I made this copy, and you're probably the first person that's read. So, but a few things on here is that it shows what's different about our dating site. And we're not just a dating site, we're a social network that groups people together by a matching algorithm. It could be for business, for personal, for dating, whatever you want. And so here's a couple of the things, just a couple that are different from anything else is that we know that in the dating world, a lot of guys message girls too much, and girls don't want that. So I figured if there's a way to be able to bridge the gap between guys and girls and make an even playing field. So the one in the middle, right underneath miXOXO, it just says that we only allow 25 initiated outgoing messages every 30 days, so that you can't bombard people with messages. And at the same time, I know that the story always goes, a guy gets a girl because he kept chasing after her. If he didn't get harassment papers from her, then he might have got her in the end. So every 30 days, you can do that at the same time. So that's just one of the many things that we do that made us different. And it's also important that a lot of dating sites and just things in general, having Joy by my side to come up with ideas, she gave a lot of input. And one of the things for her was that when she's on a dating site, and now we're more as friends, that she tells everybody she lives in Lancaster, Harrisburg. She doesn't want to tell people that she's from York. So we put that we're from Southeast Pennsylvania. And one thing about that is that we group people by their states. So you can get a lot of people. I knew there was going to be a lot of people on our app to start. I didn't know there was going to be like 10. But if you're from Southeast Pennsylvania, you're from Northern Maryland, you're close. So it actually grouped together people by that and not by radius, which is like what every other social network does. So that's just one of the 20.
So now, obviously, the whole, we'll just say the dating community or that sort of category, very, very competitive.
Yes.
So how did you have any concerns about going into such a competitive field?
So having sales reps, I thought would accomplish 2 things. One, it would be the only way we could enter the field because we don't have $10 million to market, which is what I was told it would take. And secondly, people trust their family and friends. So we were accomplishing both with the same avenue of going after that. So there was no doubt in my mind, and word of mouth is everything. So those 3 things, it was a no-brainer that I had the right strategy. I just didn't have enough people and enough following. So.
Okay. So tell us about where you're at now.
So we're at now, this summer we worked on getting our app together to be able to have a focus into the future and learn from our successes and our mistakes. And we're, like I said, we just got a quote to move forward with this new app. And it's probably going to take about 5 months to develop. I've learned to say longer than shorter because it always does. So that puts us, it's not going to be like January when I told you, but we're looking to hopefully have it sometime in late spring, and then from there to be able to take it to colleges in the fall or summer and get traction on campus because it's a much smaller niche. One takes 1 hour to get around college campus. And it could take never to get around the city. So.
And so your focus has narrowed a little bit now as well. Do you want to talk about that?
Yeah, just basically focusing on colleges and knowing that if college kids always want the next best thing, and their attention span is about as quick as a 2-year-old kid, so it lasts that long.
Well, specifically, you and I talked about the focus of, like for example, when you first envisioned miXOXO, it was a dating site. I should say actually expansion.
Yeah.
You're expanding it now to include kind of the connecting of people with similar interests.
Right.
You want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, basically having miXOXO as a dating site, it now gives us a long-term projection and a goal to get to at some point. but we gotta get the people on it first. So it's given us an expansion of being able to be more than just a dating site and just an algorithm. Now we can be where we can attract college kids and then take it from there so that they stick with us through. People aren't getting married from their college sweethearts like they used to. So as we become dating and as we become business, it builds a brand that we can, move into something that we've already created. That we would never, that answers your other, we would never have gotten to this if I just started, because we would have been sidetracked with some other project. So I'm glad that we have our core product, even though we're not using it right now.
You may not be able to disclose this, but your algorithm sounds fairly complex for your website. How did you, just the methodology, how did you go about developing that?
Yeah, I can disclose it, or at least some of it, just because it's really intense to duplicate it. It'd be probably impossible for the amount of time and hours. Basically, I came up with it just from life experiences, from basic questions, and I've known that on dating sites they ask stupid questions, in my opinion stupid, ones that are either obvious or just don't matter. Things like, what are your eye color and what are your height? Well, you can see their eye color and you can see if they're taller than someone. Or they smoke, they can stop smoking. They can drink, they can stop drinking. There's just things that aren't important or that will come out later, and there's other things that matter more, such as your religion or how many children you have. The one question I have is basically, what is your, what's your location? And I was saying about how it's grouping you differently. And that's everything, because if someone's not near you, it's going to be a lot harder to date. So that's how we came up with the questions. Just my past experiences matched with things that I felt dating sites were not fulfilling, and that they can apply to other things besides dating.
Okay, and now to kind of wrap up here, in hindsight, what lessons do you think that are important for people to know from all your experiences that you've been through?
Well, one thing that they always say, and I really couldn't do anything about it because until you give it a shot, you don't really know, is that you want to get your product as quick to market as possible because then you'll learn. The other thing about that is that you also want to have the opportunity to make all the mistakes that will help you later down the road. So it's kind of a double-edged sword. But if I didn't have the amount of money to spend on this, I probably would have done the first thing that I mentioned. So and my money would have been better spent possibly on marketing. Therefore, the answer is to get your product to market as quick as possible.
Okay. Is there anything else you'd like to share before we open it up to questions?
No, that's it. Any questions? I'd love to answer them.
I have two. One is the verifies identity, gender, and appearance. Is that a third-party feature, or did you code that yourself?
So we actually had to take that out. A lot of this was done in March when we were in Chicago, and I actually got a feedback from the head of the dating association that just get people on. So we took that out, but what it was, we were actually going to manually check every single ID, and that was going to be Zach's job, at least till we hired somebody outsourcing. So we were going to verify your ID, match your photo. Now it's coming about into dating a little more, but in the future, video dating will come into play where you can actively see people moving. So that was a suggestion I got that we would probably use in the future anyway. So
is it a legal issue that you took it out?
Is what?
A legal issue? Or?
No, there's nothing illegal about it. People would sign the terms of use and privacy policy, but it was something we took out because nobody would want to. At this point in time, people won't feel comfortable doing it. So we were told by everybody, and actually Julie yelled at me time over time again. The reason I wanted to do this, I wanted to be different. I wanted to separate ourselves from other people, but you can't have like 1,000 differences because nobody really cares.
And when I saw that too, I was concerned because you have that kind of data that you're being trusted with.
Yeah.
If a hacker gets in there and takes it, you have a lot of liability from the exposure of it.
Right. So that was one of the things where I invested too much time and effort. The man hours I put in this, besides the time, is obviously time I can't get back, but it was definitely a lot of time put into the driver's license ID and a lot to take out of it. So.
Secondly, the thing that it sounds like you have a product, and assuming that these are important to the dating people, which, I guess is all subjective, but what you need is people, a base. So I was thinking that maybe a way to market it or a way to get traction is to partner with somebody who has a huge user base. And I don't know who that could be or what it is. Maybe a fashion store with lots of young people, or a multi-level marketing or something where they can add this as a feature. They have the umbrella, but here's a feature that allows these people to date, and somehow you integrate it and get some traction.
That's a great idea, and through a lot of my networking events I went to, I've always tried to find people that I could partner with. Another chicken and egg thing is the partners want you to have people on there before they, even a company, local company that I wanted to get press for our app didn't want to give us press until we had people on the app. And that just blew me away because I was using the press to get people on the app, and they didn't even do that. So that is kind of a crazy scenario. Ideally, someone like where you were going is someone that does, gives dating advice. They would have been a dream scenario if they had enough followers, but again, the same problem I gave you.
It goes back to that saying, momentum attracts momentum. And then you have to build up your own momentum before you start to attract it from others.
Which makes you that much better off when you do, because then everybody wants you, and then, everybody knows how that goes, so.
It's
you have your
a
pick.
slow process.
Yep.
Lance, did you have a question? Or did you have something else you wanted to add? Okay, other questions or suggestions or feedback?
How's the real name working out for you? Because Google tried it, dropped it. Facebook tried it, and then got huge backlash and dropped it.
The what?
Usernames will be the member's real first name.
So nobody was gonna do it exactly like we did it. Well, our username was gonna be your first name, your last initial, and it still is gonna be that way. First name, last initial, and then the month and day that you're born.
It was the question of how is that actually working out for you?
Well, I don't have any members. I can't really tell you.
Working on that part.
We're working on that part. But I had a lot of good feedback. I know it was all about starting the conversation. We wanted people to have a reason. I'm pretty sure almost nobody knows my birthday today because it's too many people we know these days. A few family and friends, but it's nice to have something to still know that one thing about people and to have a conversation, or especially women like the Libra and all the other signs and all that. So they'll probably make more judgments on you before you get a chance. So that's the bad stuff.
Have you attended any focus groups or groups that could give you valuable feedback about the marketing aspects and looking this in a retrospect of what you've done, how much time and effort you put into it, and what you hope to accomplish from the end user? Trying to get feedback from end user people.
Sure.
Is what I'm looking for. Have you been in any kind of group like that? Or
I've been to a lot of things in a lot of different arrays, and like I said, I've worked with a few companies, so I've gotten a lot of feedback on those types of things. But I don't think I had enough of a user base to really get a feel. That's probably the only thing I'd say I missed out from this experience that you can ask for before you don't make it, is that I didn't have enough time with members on there.
Where would you get that though?
Well, through the companies that I worked with, I got a lot of focus group time spent on pretty much things they told me. In retrospect, I probably could have utilized. You cannot be for everyone, and I said, but I am. So I'm pretty much using things that I've learned throughout. Like you said, through things you don't do, you're better off not learning from this. So, but a lot of different networking groups. I can't tell you how many I went to, and a lot of people are interested. Also, when I went to sales job events, we got a ton of feedback from potential sales reps. And we got plenty of great advice, and basically there's a need for this. That's the number one thing, is that there is not a dating site that is, for right now, that's what we are until we prove. There's no dating site out there that sufficiently does what it should do, and it's hard to do it because nobody can get into the industry. So
I'm talking, I get to my son and hit the market for you.
All right, wonderful.
Because he runs the mailroom, so he knows everybody.
Exactly.
There you go.
Most powerful guy there on.
Yeah, there you go. Go get your mail from the paper.
Okay, yeah, Joe.
A little unclear on one aspect here, so maybe you can help me out with it. The top left corner identifies you as different because you meet through family and friends just like it happens in the real world.
Oh, yeah.
I like that. How does that work?
Sure. So that's one of our key differentiations, that we were essentially a combination of a dating site and Facebook, where you would actually add a friend that's your friend, and you can see people's real friends. Dating sites have never done that before. That's one of the major problems with online dating, is that it's individually people signing on there and there. Now that it's actively people on Tinder on their phone all the time, it's become so part of our society that you will see people's friends on their profile, which has never been done.
So are you depending upon someone else to make an introduction for you?
There's two facets. There's three ways you can really actually meet people. One, you can be grouped together via the questions. Two, you can add them as a friend okay, which is what you're saying. And the third one, we actually were gonna set it up, and in the future we will, where you can introduce someone to someone else.
But that's not a mandatory part.
It's not mandatory, it's in,
Okay.
which, and really almost everything that I've come up with in the app, it's in the hundreds. Other dating apps only incorporate one of those things that makes it, for example, that one difference of introducing someone to a friend. These two people that met, they created it. It's called Just Meet Ken or something like that, and that's how they met. So that's how their app or their website works completely. So it's usually just one differentiation for a dating site, whereas I wanted to combine all of them into one. So.
I guess the line, to finish up, what I'm looking at here is friction. So, honestly, I don't know much about dating sites, but I assume that it's person to person. You know, I sign up, I put in a profile, somebody else puts in a profile, and some algorithm does some kind of matching, and I'm sort of introduced to that person directly, one-to-one. And in that sense, there's no intermediary except the algorithm.
That's correct.
In this sense, if you have a third party who's acting as the intermediary, the introducer, there's a dependency you've introduced. You've actually added friction into the system. And you're talking about simplicity, and I like that. You always want to aim for simplicity. And here, in a sense, you've added complexity by adding the third party. I'm not sure if that helps you or hinders you. As a differentiator, it sounds right. And in the real world, that's how I would hope it would happen.
Mhm.
It often does happen. In this world, though, you might be swimming upstream because everybody else is doing it simpler.
So with the intermediary and all you have is the algorithm, that's quite an intermediary, because if you take the most important aspects of someone, their religion, their race, their where they live, and there's a few other things in there, and you actually do that. It's worked. Online dating has succeeded significantly in the last 20 years, and therefore there's a trust factor in online dating that has overcome hurdles, and you signing up for something because you want to find someone. It's kind of like Trevor was saying, if you Google for someone, you're actively looking for them. Well, these people are literally going onto the app because they want to find someone, and there's nothing more than you're inviting yourself open to meet people, and now we're providing you. It's not just with one person. Keep in mind, it's if there's people on there, there's going to be a lot of people that then you pick from. And you just want to know, like online these days, you just want to know about someone. You just want to make sure you have a feel for them. So I get it. It's not like a person-to-person. That's the hard part about online dating. But it's the best that you can do is if you incorporate showing their friends and family. Because right now people do that. When you go, if you meet someone, they check your Facebook account. You know, I was just trying to take it all and say, hey, you don't have to go to Facebook anymore. You can do it right here. And they're real friends, not a whole, not 10,000 friends. So. Does that answer your question? Does that help you out a little bit? I know it's a differentiation you mentioned.
So one thing we did not cover was the cost of this service. What is that?
That's a great point. So that's one of the things I've learned. I ideally believe some people should pay for this product because I think it adds a lot of value. But after asking my brother, who just to confirm that I was wrong, he said until you have a lot of people in there, you can't really charge people. So we ended up deciding to make it free, and until there's a significant amount of people on there, it will always be free. At the same time, this spring, we also learned some more, like through meeting people and some feedback that you mentioned. And I was against advertising 100%, and it got me into thinking about advertising, and therefore, we might never charge people. It depends, but advertising is definitely a route we are going to go, and it's just got to be done in the right way.
So let me ask a question here real quick, and I don't mean to put single people here on the spot, but if you're a single person, would you mind raising your hand if you feel comfortable with doing that? Just see how many are in the room here. Okay, of the people who raise their hand, keep them up, keep them up. How many of you, keep them up if you would use this service?
If there are people on it.
If assuming there were people on there, would you use this service? Okay, so very few. So what made you decide that this wouldn't be something that maybe you're interested in as an effective tool for meeting other people? Am I putting you guys on the spot?
I mean, I'll answer the question. I don't have a problem with that. It's the same reason I wouldn't use any other service. I just simply prefer, let's call it the old-fashioned way, a non-digital way. And because I do come out of a cybersecurity background,
Trustee
concern
Sheets?
over what information I may be posting there, other people may be able to get at. And I'm also not sure that what's posted is real or true.
But that's why to verify the identity, to make it true.
And I see where he was coming from on that, and I like that.
I do too.
I also understand the problem with introducing it, because it introduces friction, so it's a challenge.
But that's an interesting point you bring up too, about the integration of maybe this app with local groups somehow that are formed around it to be able to meet each other.
So the personal thing, I sometimes I forget things that I've done. Having our marketing philosophy actually incorporated what you said. We have that covered, so tell me if I'm wrong here. But by having sales reps and it's spreading via word of mouth, you would have, well, and the answer to your question, to one here, is that people would join dating sites because a family or friend told them to do so. That's the number one. That's why only a few hands maybe, and we're not all singles here. But if I was your family or friend, I'm just the guy up here, talking with Daryl, they would edge you, say, come on, you can't be single forever, you need to meet someone. There's peer pressure to meet someone. So we have that going. There's a lot of factors. That's one of them going for us. But the sales, people would have heard about it only from a family or friend via our word of mouth sales. And that was another reason why we were going to do that, because they need that edge. There's also a ton of single people that won't try online dating for reasons that you mentioned, but they're staying around single, or they're just not happy or whatever. So.
Okay, we'll have to take a last question here for tonight.
What if?
Oh, I'm sorry, two more.
Oh.
Take Ken and hand this up to. Go ahead.
Come here, go ahead.
Not to your face.
Oh, right, okay, good. What if you had a charge of $1 as an application fee? The reason is not necessarily to generate income, although that would be helpful, but would that not give you the verification you're looking for, that this is a real person, and you have the name, their address certified? I mean, you'd know that then.
From the credit card?
Yeah, from the credit card.
A lot of people don't want to well, we actually were going to do it through, it's a great idea. We were going to actually not have to submit credit cards because it was going to all be done through Apple. So there's some things that it might have covered that, but I'm not so worried about it anymore. There's a show called Catfish, and Catfish people, there's definitely going to be people making stuff up. It's just where we are right now as a society, and people are okay with that. They know that it happens, so it's just something you got to deal with. But when video comes involved in it, it will be much more secure, because if you video chat someone, they decline you, they're not real. So, and you'll see their act.
Yeah, that would be a real differentiator for you, the no bull site.
Yeah, and people are starting to do that.
Time.
Yeah, people are starting to do video. I mean, it's going to become part of the industry. So, yeah.
Okay. Kenan, sheep ahead.
Thank you. You've definitely done some things to put yourself in the category of one, which is great. I'm kind of wondering, though, in your view, do you have like some biggest competitors for anything similar? Or?
Yeah, everybody asks, how you're different. That's the only question you seem to get. I like the way you phrased it. The biggest competitor is anybody that currently has members. There's two main ones that everybody talks about, which is eHarmony and Match.com. Now, Match.com is owned by a bigger company called IAC, and IAC is a monopoly. They own the entire dating industry. The next is Spark Networks, which owns eHarmony. Those two are our competition. That is it, because they own all of them. And then other startups that are going along, they're actually doing quite well. There's a few that have done exceptionally well, and they're starting to get traction. So, but as far as a matching algorithm, nobody's doing what I'm doing, and that's swimming across, the other way against the tide. They all are just trying to get people on and off as quick as possible via, location, which is what Tinder is and all those other ones.
Well, thanks for your answer. I'll just offer one little insightful thing from my own marketing line, and that being that perhaps you chart out for these competitors that you've named and look at outlining, expressing, articulating what is the distinction between you and them.
Yeah,
And
my problem
one
is...
of my mentors has often emphasized that you position your messaging in such a way that you're addressing what the negative perception is of the competitors failing to do something.
Right, and where I could have been different and maybe been successful at this point in time, but I'm glad that I'm not, is I could have just come up with one thing that makes us different and follow that. And when you have to explain 1,000 differences like these and the many more out there, nobody can follow you. And so I could have done that route, and that's what most people do. But I think in the long run, I'll have something that people can't compete with because they can't do all of it. So, but yeah, it's a good point. Yeah.
All right, very good. Well, Ethan, thank you very
Thank you,
much.
Daryl.
Great
Appreciate it.
interview.
Yep, thanks.